This podcast is a production of the Brickyard Network, an extension of the Archie Bray Foundation for the Ceramic Arts. To find out more about our lineup of ceramic podcasts, visit brickyardnetwork.org.
Hey, this is Erin with Cornell Studio Supply located in Dayton, Ohio, exclusive distributor of Jen Allen templates and Put a Lid on It t-shirts. We are a proud sponsor of this episode and the Brickyard Network. Find all your pottery and ceramic sculpture needs, including the largest stock of GR pottery forms at cornellstudiosupply.com. At Cornell Studio Supply, we are owned and operated for potters, by potters.
Hey folks, Sunshine Cobb here, ceramic artist and current resident coordinator at the Bray. I'm excited to announce that our application portal is now open for our 2025 residency cohort. Applications are due by December 19th, 2024. For details on all our residencies available, head to archiebray.org/residencies. Please help us spread the word about this amazing new opportunity at the Bray. Thanks so much.
Welcome to the Tales of a Red Clay Rambler podcast, featuring interviews with culture makers from around the world. This is Ben Carter. I'm going to be your host. If you'd like more information on the show, please visit our website, talesofaredclayrambler.com. Welcome back to episode 529 of the podcast. Thank you all for tuning in. Today on the show, I'm talking with Bill Wilkey, who fires his geometric forms in a soda atmosphere that exposes and softens their textured edges. In this week's interview, we talk about his mind-blowing experience visiting Brunelleschi's Dome in Florence, Italy, the impact of his Archie Bray residency on his career, and creating a life with his family in Helena, Montana. If you'd like to check out his work, you can go to wilkeyarts.com. This interview is the first in a series featuring former Bray residents, which will lead up to the residency deadline on December the 19th. You can check out more information and apply at archiebray.org/residencies. Before we get to today's interview, I wanted to highlight a few friends of the podcast that need help recovering from Hurricane Helene. Cassie Butcher, Maria Andrade Troya, and the other artists of Kerr Studios were hit hard when the river flooded up to the second story of their building. The studio can't reopen, but there is a GoFundMe to help support the artists to relocate to a new location. If you'd like to support them and make a donation, you can scroll down and check out the link in the show notes for this episode. Without further ado, we'll get to the interview. Well, I thought we would start actually talking about Tennessee and growing up in Tennessee. So can you talk about where you're from?
Yeah, I'm from a little town outside of Knoxville called Mascot, Tennessee. You know, that's a phrase that stands for something like Alcoa stands for Aluminum Company of America. So Mascot stood for Mining and Smelting Company of Tennessee. And so there was like a big rock quarry that we saw on the way to school every day. And we crossed over this, what seems like ancient concrete bridge across the Holston River. And so I just grew up like kind of watching these big machines work and kind of just thinking about stuff on your way to school on the bus, And, of course, we grew up in church and actually... because I grew up in the Methodist denomination, I went to summer camps near Jonesboro, Tennessee. That's actually where I met my wife, Amanda. We were both working at the summer camp together.
Oh, I didn't even know that. Were you teaching clay?
No, I was just a camp counselor. taking care of kids, making sure they didn't fall off any cliffs or drown in the river, that kind of stuff. And so I learned to whitewater kayak there and all that kind of stuff, and do a lot of outdoor adventuring. But it was high school art class, my freshman year of high school at Carter High School. I don't know if that's important, but so I grew up with like pen and paper at the ready. My mom had grew up painting, and so she always supplied us with as much art materials as we could use, which was really amazing. So I had sketchbooks just always filled with like Ninja Turtle drawings and that kind of stuff. And so my high school art teacher, I went to Carson Neiman, because of course he had like a really, really thick Southern accent. And so he, one day he was like, all right, we're going to try out clay. And so he proceeded to throw like this like 2 foot, in my memory, it seems like a 2 foot cylinder, and he's like, oh my gosh. And he says, Mr. Hickey was his name. And he said, now, all right, kids, I'm making this look a lot easier than it is. And we're like, okay, Mr. Hickey, but I'm an artist. And so he was like, all right, everybody else gets to try it. And me, I was like really cocky about it because I was like, I'd already had like an established kind of reputation of being able to draw and, copy what I saw. And so we try it, and you could probably guess what happens, right? Like I just failed immediately. Like I go to center the mound of clay, and I'm done. Like it's probably like 3 seconds, and it just kind of whips off of there and hits the side of the wall next to the wheel. And all the kids were like, "Whoa!" So what are we gonna do? And so because of that failure, that like immediate, like I'm not good at this. Like I felt challenged by the material. And I've heard this story before, but for me, it's still the same kind of occurrence. Like just trying to be able to manipulate it in the way that I thought I could, or that I saw other people doing. It was a big draw for me. And so I would lie to my dad and tell him that I had missed the bus, so I could stay after school to just try to. It took me 3 months of like staying after school to learn to center. So my high school art teacher was kind of like, "All right, you can figure it out." Like he did the flashy demo, but other than that, he was kind of hands off. Let us fail on our own.
And how old are you?
Well, I was 14. Yeah.
Okay. And how old are you now?
I'm 38.
38. Okay. And I'm 44 because we both were of a similar age. And this was an era in which kids could stay after school in high schools. I had a very similar story, learned to throw in high school. And the teacher let me have a lot of leeway. Like I could come during lunch period. By my senior year, I actually could just stay in the art room. Somehow they just let me stay in there.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
and that's
yeah.
specific to our era. Like I don't think that happens anymore. Because in a world of school shootings, everything is more regulated.
Locked down for sure. Like there was a supply closet at the end of the art room that had an outside door, and I learned that I could jog it, like it would look locked, but you could open it from the outside, and I would sneak in on the weekend and throw pots. And so Monday morning class would roll around and they'd be like, "What the heck, Bill?" And I'd be like, "I don't know. That's just, I guess I'm just good." But no, and then even back then, like the only thing I could really give my work was just time and focus and care. Like that's always been the formula for me achieving anything.
And I feel like too, in that era of ceramics, it was kind of a sweet spot because we had sort of the early days of the internet, so you could find other artists, but also you're from Tennessee, I'm from Virginia, similar region. So also there was just like people made stuff in the Appalachian region, like whether it was quilts or whatever it was, people made things.
Like my mom crochets Afghans for people.
Yeah, can you talk about the influence of just being around other people making things as an influence?
My grandmother was an underwater basket weaver, and for like a long time before I ever saw her make stuff, I was like, they don't have a pool. It's just like, where is she doing this? Like seeing her make woven baskets was really important to me. And then I have a bunch of quilts that my grandparents made. Um, my grandfather was a mechanic, so just seeing him be able to diagnose a problem and kind of go in there and fix it. And then that kind of I gravitated towards a person in undergraduate school that ran a machine shop um, near Bristol, Tennessee, or Virginia, depending on which side you're on, right? Um, and so just seeing him be able to manipulate all that material and be able to do things to the surface and just kind of like, he made nuts and bolts and seeing the schematic drawings of how, what they were going to do to the material and break down the tools and like, I don't know, they look like huge machine guns. I forget what they're called now, but basically like you would have a 6-position tool and you put a rod in at the first position and then it would turn and then that turn would do something to it and then the next turn would do something to it, and by 6 turns you ended up with like a tool or a bolt that you could like fasten or affix or that it would do something. It was just amazing for me that you could plan it out like that. So that was a big influence in undergraduate school.
Can you talk about East Tennessee State in general, that area? Because I feel like there's a connection between that school, Aramont, and Boone, where I went to school at Appalachian State. They're all connected because they're not that far from each other.
Well, I have to start actually where I first went was Tennessee Tech University. So I started there right out of high school, and so I feel like I had a really unique upbringing in that, like I told my parents what I wanted to do, and they were like, "Okay," it's like we'll support you, and so I'm really fortunate to have that. Um, just being able to follow this dream is really good, or it's really I can't imagine what I'd be without that support. And so I was able to seek colleges from high school that had a really good art program. And so we visited East Tennessee State right out of high school, visited Tennessee Tech, and I don't know if you've ever been to the Appalachian Center for Craft, but it's just like it's on a peninsula in Center Hill Lake, up in this uh, winding road that's just in the mountains of central Tennessee. And you were carted there uh, by bus as a student, as like a freshman. And so you could get back on that bus to go back to school, or you could stay and just keep throwing pots and not worry about your other classes.
Sounds like that's what you did.
Yeah, that's what I did. And so after being nicely asked to leave by the university, I was able to like go to East Tennessee State after, because that's kind of like where my wife and I summered at that summer camp. So after I basically flunked out of Tennessee Tech, Amanda and I got married, which I was pretty young for that, I guess. I was just barely 20. And then I enrolled at a community college in East Tennessee while we were getting married, and we had like odd jobs and stuff. And then I was able to transfer to East Tennessee State the next year after a year full of kayaking and going to classes. Like I was that kid with like the kayak on their car, like going to math class. Yeah. And so after that, I was able to go to East Tennessee State with The teacher at the time, the professor, was Don Davis. I don't know, and I had seen his book. Oh man, I'm remembering something about Tennessee Tech. So, the reason I chose Tennessee Tech is because Vince Patelka put out that book, a student handbook, and I was given that by my other high school art teacher as like, here you go, like you show promise, I guess. So here's this book. So that's why we went to Tennessee Tech, and Vince is still making a lot of good pots in Virginia, I think somewhere. But I digest. So Don Davis was at East Tennessee State at the time, and he also had a cool pottery book. And so I was just like, okay, you just have a teacher that puts out a book, like that's just usual. And so I think one of the benefits of being at East Tennessee State was it was right across the mountain from Penland. So we would get visiting artists that just seemed, I don't know if it was like planned, but the magazines would come out, Clay Times, Ceramics Monthly, Nick Jerling would be on the cover, Gay Smith would be on the cover, Ellen Shankin, and then they showed up at our school in front of us. And it was just, I don't know, like it was such a wealth of information. I feel so fortunate to just watch them all work. And as I continue to work, like I still hear things that they said to us during those workshops as I guess I've established a philosophy of how I make my work. Like it's all just drawn from those experiences that I picked up along the way. And then let's see, I guess it was like 2010, and the gallery staff at ETSU was like, you should probably have a senior show sometime. And I was like, yeah, I guess you're right. And so before that summer, I went to Penland as a work study assistant, and that's where I took a class with Bede Clark, and that's where I got to meet him and spend some time with him. And of course, he taught at the University of Missouri. And at the end of the workshop, I was like, hey, would it be cool if I send you an application? And he was like, I don't know. And then he emailed me when he got back home and was like, actually, yeah, like go ahead and send an application into grad school. And so that's kind of like how East Tennessee, the Appalachians went for me, is just soaking it all up is amazing.
Yeah, and being able to see people that are actively in magazines and writing books and all that, I think it also just imparts that like this is a legitimate job and that you can make a living doing this. Because that was the main thing my family would always ask me is like, is this a real job? Like, can you make a living?
Jury's still out.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, meeting Amanda's family was kind of, I would get more of that from them. It was like, so you're like, you make pottery? And I was like, yeah. I'm like, so what are you going to do that? And I was like, well, I guess there's like two real options. You can, go to a university and teach other people how to make clay. Or you can, try to be an artist, and there's other ways like art centers and stuff like that. I had that kind of elevator pitch down pretty well, you know? Yeah.
That's for the cousins when you got to explain to the cousins what you're doing.
Yeah, like one of Amanda's cousins, like her husband was like a really highly certified electrician, which I can also talk to because my dad grew up working, I grew up with him working in the TVA dam system. So he would go to different dams and just he was a dam operator, which was always fun to say as a kid.
Wow, what a specific profession. Like you're the only person I've ever heard of that like I didn't know that job existed until you're telling me that now.
Well, I mean, from what I saw, they used to do like swing shift. So he would work 3 weeks, 3 weeks during the day, 3 weeks during the night, which was really tough. But when I got to high school, he switched. They did most of the night shift in with like these automated machines. Yeah, so they kind of transitioned to that. So yeah, and also I would say like that's probably more of an influence than I think is being able to go inside these humongous concrete structures and just like see how they worked. It's pretty amazing. And then also, that would be like a local school field trip. Just like go see what's inside Cherokee Dam. And I felt like so like, oh, I already know what this is.
Well, this is a good transition because your work definitely is architecturally related and specifically planar related. Like it kind of makes sense you're talking about big concrete slabs and then that your work has some of those elements. So when did you realize like actually I can just make pots that are about the things I already think are interesting?
I would say most of the work that I've put out since I've been in grad school and here at the Bray and professionally on, most of that stems from a trip that we got to take as my last class in undergrad. So it stems from a class that we took in. We got to go to Italy. I don't know if you've. It's this 12th century estate in northern Italy called Spannacchia. And my professor Don Davis went and set up this program, this like summer exchange program. And this place like is mostly used for organic farming for like olives and grapes. They make their wine and all that kind of stuff. But it was just a shock to my cultural system to see all this old stuff. It's like we don't really have that in America. Our oldest architecture is going to be a couple hundred years old, if that. And so to go here and work in Italy in this literally like pig barn, like each student got like a little stall, and the walls were like pig height. So you could like see over next, like, oh, what are you working on? So everybody got like a table, and it was this cool like green earthenware clay, and yeah, a lot of good memories from that. So um, going to Italy and seeing all this seeing people exist in and around things that were like over 1,000 years old was a real draw for me, and just being able to see how people augmented their life around these old things, and then also uh, like catered to it. And the biggest feature for this trip was we got to go to Florence and go and like walk up into the dome, and we had to read this book about how the two sculpture artists like competed for the baptistry doors in Florence. And it's been a while since I picked out this um, memory, so I'm escaping on the names, but they're like famous Italian Renaissance artists. And just to be able to read that book and then go to this dome and then actually like walk up into it, the engineering that had to be achieved to actually just build the thing. The domes had like double arches, so there's an inside dome that was supported by buttressed arches all the way up. And then seeing tools that they had to invent and scaffolding that they had to invent just to get the materials up and up and up as they went. And part of the problem they had to solve was they built the walls I forget, some time ago before anybody even attempted to do the arch. So the person who built the arch actually lost the battle for the baptistry doors, but I would say like overall the achievement was greater for him. Like you see the dome whenever you're in Florence, it's like right there. You can be like, okay, that's where it is. And so from way far off, it looks really round, like perfectly round. Um, and I found it as like you use that landscape identifier to triangulate yourself within the city. So it's like, where's that thing? Where's the mountain? Okay, so I know I need to go over here and do this, or the museum's over that way. And then the closer we get to the dome, it's just like you start to notice all these other details about it. It has what looks round from afar actually has like pretty distinct planes. Um, And then so we were able to walk all the way up to the top, like we're at the top, and then look down on these plains. And that I remember that so vividly. It's just like, oh gosh, that clean line was like, this is what I'm about. So basically it's like in between undergrad, like it was my last class of undergrad to go to Italy. And then like I immediately started grad school, like this trip sandwiched my schools. And so I just had all this information and this experience, and I was trying to just distill it down to why it mattered. And the more I went through critiques in grad school, I had to really I was challenged by a lot of other professors on why I made pots. I'm sure you probably like outside of the ceramic department. And it took me a long time to like figure out how to articulate why that was important. And so putting all these like elements of detail and texture and like the sense of like existing into the work was to try to convey that like this is like a thing you could count on, or a thing that you could like put your trust in, like when you go to use it. So I think that's kind of like what I drew from the experience and what I was trying to imbue into the work in grad school.
We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by the Rosenfield Collection of Functional Ceramic Art. The collection exists as an online resource for research and inspiration, featuring photos of over 4,000 objects made by over 1,000 artists. The images are high quality and can be used with no permission required, making them a great resource for students and teachers. To find out more, visit rosenfieldcollection.com.
The Bray Clay business is your best source for Bray epoxy, a two-part moldable epoxy intended for post-firing repairs. Working like clay, it's easy to shape, texture, fill gaps, and recreate missing parts. Bray epoxy is sold in tan, white, and black base colors, and we also have a 9-color kit that will allow you to perfectly disguise your repair. Order online anytime at archiebrayclay.com.
I feel like that your pots have a certain tightness that I can relate to. Like I throw and rib things so that you can't see the throwing lines. You know, like there's a process that's linear and that gives a outcome. But I also know that my desire for that can drive me crazy. So how do you make things that feel like the right amount of tightness for your aesthetic without becoming completely obsessive and having it be too much and make it not be fun?
That was something that I really had to tackle during my residency, because I was just, kind of like full circle. I met this guy named Tom Yazchak. He was the workshop assistant for Bede at Penland in 2010. And then I come to the Bray right after grad school, and like, there's Tom. And I don't know if you've ever been around Tom, but he just like, he fills a table in an afternoon, and then he gets those pots finished like the next day. And that is not my timeline. And so like dealing with deadlines and all the stuff that you accept to take on during your residency, I just realized that I had to change something about how I was making to meet those deadlines, to get ready for shows. And as my fellow residents can tell you, like, I was pretty close on a lot of deadlines, but yeah, hot pots. And so dealing with just meeting, the professional, trying to stay sane in that environment, I had to realize like what could I change, or what could I simplify, or what could I, if I just made a round pot and did the geometric lines or the patterning or the texture, would that still be received the same? And even now, like I just have to make a number of just simple pots. Like I hate that Matt Kelleher would chastise me if he heard me say that. He was demoing and he was like, the term like just a pot is like makes his skin crawl. But anyway, I had to have some kind of relief in the workflow to be able to still get like some of these pots that are just so intensive or so making just a set of, and I say just a set of like round little plates like this past year for the Montana Clay Tour, it just felt so like I could make that and then I could come back to the more intricate work with like some more focus and some more energy instead of like totally draining it and kind of just working through stuff.
The pots that are more straightforward process wise, do you price those different than the, say, the jars or casseroles that are like super labor intensive?
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. You know, there's still like I make like uh round cups and mugs and then I set them next to squared off pots that have a lot more texture and time. And so those are, you know, I would say that's like my studio line if I had to put it that way. Yeah. And but the big thing was like, will they sell the same? And I think for not for gallery exhibitions, like those people are still expecting like what I would call my tried and true work. Um, and so I send them like maybe 75% um, square architectural work and then 25%, you know, round quicker pots. But for studio sales or like clay tours, like that's, uh, you know, you're not, the people that are coming there don't know what you put in a gallery like previously, right? And so they're just looking for something that they can use. And these like plate bowls that I've been making in the past year or so have been like really well received. And I just like that people just use them all the time. And so that's been fulfilling and it fills kilns quicker, which is I think overall that's to the benefit to the overall benefit.
Yeah, and I think firing atmospherically, if you're testing out a new slip or a new glaze or whatever you're testing, a slow firing cycle is bad. You know, like you need the new information to figure it out. So, how do you think about that? Because I noticed at the like at the Bray, you've built a couple of the kilns that are the atmospheric kilns that are there. You're building a kiln at your house. Like you've been a kiln builder as well as a maker. So, how when you get a new kiln, how do you test your materials, or I guess how do you start with a new kiln and make a new body of work?
Yeah, you have to make some stuff that doesn't really matter if it turns out that well or not. And so for me, that's planters. hmm Um, so as I work towards finishing my kiln at my house, like I have to think about, you know, especially we're gonna get snowed in pretty soon, and I won't be able to continue work this year. And so when that happens, it's like the shift will happen to the studio where I just will, you know, it's dark in Montana for a long time during the day. As you can attest to that, the people's first winter here are always the toughest. That's their toughest transition, and so it's just like you gotta fill your nights with activities. And you know, during the summer, you're like, I can't find time to be in the studio. Like, there's so much. The sun's out, you know. And so in the winter time for me is like that phase, I believe, is just studio time to work out.
Let's talk about moving to Helena. You've been there for 10 years,
Yeah.
and Helena is a very small town in some ways, but it is the capital of Montana, and the Bray is there. So it's a cultural hub, even though it's not massive.
It's not a big town. You have to watch where you pick your nose here, for sure. Yeah, and for me, like because I pick up on details and faces, like just driving around town, like I start to see cars and like I will look at a car like driving down the street and then notice where their car is parked in their house. Like that's the kind of place Helena is, and for me, that's I don't know if that's good or bad, but it's small enough to where I know where people live that I've never met.
hmm
Yeah.
Can you talk about moving to Helena as a couple and deciding to like start a life in this town?
Yeah. So we just finished grad school, coming off of the Ensika in Milwaukee, I believe. That was well. So talking about building a life. So during grad school, I one of the only things that I found to kind of push my work was to apply for shows. And so I tried to apply to a show every month while I was in grad school. And I got into something like almost 30 shows. Um, yeah, it was like, and I'm still not that great at packing pots, to be honest. Um, and so, getting into these shows and trying to see what people would accept or what was taken, and then coming to that led to applying to the Instica student shows, which it's like one of the claims in my bio, like I have 3 consecutive student shows, blah blah blah. Because like as far as like atmospheric pots, like there wasn't that many people applying. It's like me and Lewis Riley and a few others. And so I was like pretty intimidated to apply to the Bray. Like I had a lot of other plates spinning at the time. Like I had this folder on my computer. It was like 2014 applications. The list goes on, like Carbondale Clay Center, Red Lodge, blah blah blah. And so we had kind of talked about just residency was the next step after grad school, because we had like negative money, and so it's like I need a place to continue working. And then man, this question keeps like unfolding more and more answers to it.
That's all right.
Because we also had a kid during grad school. And so our oldest child, like he was born my second year in grad school. And so then we had to, figure out a situation to take care of him. And so, I actually moved my studio. Like I had a grad studio, at Columbia, Missouri. And then, I also had another studio in our basement of our rental house. And so just to be there more often. And so I would make a bunch of pots in the basement. We had a kiln that actually bought from Lewis. And when we were firing it, I would actually like untether the oven, like the stove from the breaker box, and then put in the kiln. And then so we had to like schedule other meals, like okay, the kiln's firing, we have to do crock pot meals and all this other stuff to be able to plan around it. And then I would take the bisque pots to school and glaze and fire them. And so figuring all that out, getting into student shows, then we realized we were expecting again, like right in that transition period. So trying to move and all this stuff. And then when we got to the Bray, August of 14, we like made the announcement that we were going to have another child right as soon as I got here. And man, I'm telling you, like people were just so supportive and helpful. And you're moving to a new place and trying to get everything figured out. The community at the Bray is just, bar none. Like you get to teach classes while you're here. And from teaching those classes, you get kind of injected into the community immediately. And without that kind of community injection, like I don't think we would have stayed the whole time, or probably not even chosen to move here. It's been the community that is what we came back for. So during the course of my residency, like I had never lived in a place that you needed snow tires. Like we drive like little cars. We don't have like 4-wheel drive trucks or anything. So I was like, so what do you guys do when they don't plow the roads? Because they don't do that all the time. Like they plow the through streets, but then like neighborhoods are last on the line. So it's like, how do you get out of your driveway with like 3 feet of snow at the edge? And so the community students would like look for snow tires for me. Like this guy named our community student Gary Anderson, his wife's now on the board, Joan. Like he sent me newspaper clippings of like where like these guys are giving out rims and this and that. And it's just been the support there was just amazing. That's how we did it. It's how we uh, um, it's how we existed while we were here.
When y'all decided to make Helena your home, that included sending your kids to Helena schools. So how has that been? Like as a parent, how do you think about Helena schools and I guess Montana schools as a whole?
Well, we're the capital, so the the Office of Public Instruction, the OPI, is based here in Helena. So I feel like Helena gets kind of like maybe not the leading edge, but they're trying out stuff here. I feel like before they send it out to the rest of the state, perhaps. And so you're more like connected directly to the changes, which can be good or bad depending on the political environment. But overall, I'd say like Helena schools are great. Uh, I mean, just like in college, when you had a class that had over 30 kids in it, I don't feel like you really felt like you were seen by the instructor. And so most of the classes my kids have been in, there's probably hasn't been more than 15 or 20 students. So you get more direct one-on-one time, which is, I feel like they benefited from.
I think having the Bray be kind of on the outskirts of Helena, you mentioned that like unless you get tied into the Helena community, some residents live there and they never really know anyone in town. But having kids is great because then automatically you get to know the Helena people. So it's like another way to get into the community.
Yeah, like the previous director, Steve Lee, like his kids go to my kids' elementary school. Like my kid, my second kid, like his youngest kid, they're both in the same class. It's just like an interesting, just kind of small townness. It's kind of hard to break through to the community if you don't take that first step of interjecting yourself or it's hard. Well, I don't know. Whatever. I also, I have a gym membership. So there's a guy I talked to at the gym. He never knew what the beret was. Um, it's just an interesting existence to be like such a well-known place in the world of ceramics. But then you have people that have lived here in Helena your whole life or their whole life, and they don't know what the beret is. So that kind of community connection is something I feel like is beneficial to the Bray and the residents. So trying to foster that is something that I would like to put some time in.
Well, to wrap up, I actually reached out to Amanda and I got her to send me some questions. So this is going to be our lightning round. First, she said, "Who's your favorite studio assistant?"
Oh my gosh, Amanda Wilkey. Yeah, she's been there through it all.
That's right.
Without her, there would be so many pots and kilns that didn't get finished. I don't know where I'd be without her.
Well, the second thing is she said potters are all about food. Who made the best food while you were a resident?
Oh my gosh. I don't know if you've ever had the pleasure of having food thrust in your face by Hisu Lee.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But oh my gosh. She's got like these Korean pancakes like on a chopstick and she's like, here. Here. Yeah. You're like, oh, nice to meet you.
Hisu is an amazing cook. I mean, walking into the rec center when you could smell that broth cooking, because sometimes she would make broth and she would cook for like 5 hours and you could just smell that smell. It was an amazing thing. And a big part of the Bray is communal eating, both the pizza parties, which I know you've been a big
Just
part of.
One, yeah.
Yeah, making the pizzas, but people like Hisu, all kinds of people that are amazing chefs have come through as clay artists that then the Bray community gets to benefit from the good food.
I mean, there's been so many, I could trace back so many lines to that. Like in undergrad school, it was Daniel Marinelli. He was a sculpture student who then went on to be a resident at Penland. And if you drive up to Penland now, like he made the the big sign that you drive across, right? Um, and so I remember having a risotto that he made me, like back in undergrad. It was just like, oh my gosh, like what the heck is this? And then in graduate school, my studio mate Norleen Nasri, I think she's in Flower City this
Okay.
year. But gosh, like she made these like amazing banana fritters. And even it's not just my fellow resident artists, like there's also visiting artists that come to the Bray and spend some time here. And so Sun Kuya was here. Yeah, and a couple of things that I know about him is he is an excellent cook, and of course Minsu as well. But he's also like a Japanese minor league baseball player.
I didn't know that.
Maybe it wasn't Japanese, but like we played wiffle ball and stuff, and he was like, "Oh yeah," and he would talk about all his experiences, and you're like, "Whoa!" And then the next day he cooks us like this amazing, like spicy pork bulgogi, and that recipe and that meal has become like a staple for our family.
Oh,
Like it's in
nice.
our like 2-week rotation, you know. And it's just so gathering all these experiences and people and just I don't know how I would have had such a great experience at the Bray if not for the community, if not for the food that we got to share, and just the outreach of of being a resident and what that means for my career. It's been amazing.
Well, the last question she sent, she said, "Have you ever been detained at the border?" Which I thought was a funny question. So tell us the story about being detained at the border and why you were detained.
Yeah. So during your residency, maybe you didn't have the same experience because you're pretty well established in the field. So me, I would get these emails from people in these art centers that were asking for me, and it was just an amazing like, oh, this feels really good. Really, it can like the Bray can really stroke your ego if you let it. But then it can come back to bite you if you aren't like responsible about it. And I was like really close to the edge. Like people would keep asking for shows and work, and I would like overpromise and then underdeliver towards the end. And so I got asked to participate in this workshop in Canada, in Calgary, at this place called the North Mount Pleasant Art Center.
I love that place. Those people are great.
Yeah, yeah, it was amazing. Such a cool time, but I had a hard time getting there because the studio manager at the time was like trying to set it up, and I'd heard this like horror story from Lorna Meaden that said like she actually got like turned away because I guess like for like border patrol, I guess. Yeah.
The customs
Mhm.
folks, they're
Yeah,
looking at the
the
visas.
Canadian customs folks were like, "Oh, well, this isn't like you can't do this because they're supposed to offer this service to Canadians or whatever." So the studio manager at the time just told me to say that I was going on vacation. Um, and growing up in East Tennessee, like I don't know, there's like a religious aspect to it, the Ten Commandments and all that stuff. And so like lying was like kind of a big deal. And I'm not a good liar, I'll just tell you. And so I'm like, oh, I'm on vacation. And then the customs agent, who's good at their job, noticed that I had child seats in the back with no kids in them of my car. And so he was like, actually, just pull in here and we need to talk to you. And so based that experience or him noticing that, my brain just started racing. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be like thrown in jail tonight. And so I was really anxious about it. So the person I interviewed with at the custom agent, basically got it out of me that I was doing a workshop, and I had to then prove with an email that they told me to lie to the border patrol.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like I had to pull it up on my phone. And I don't know if you've ever dealt with Canadian people, but like the way that they say things is different. And so the phrase that this agent just kept repeating, like, because of your dishonesty, Like oh my God, I like tore at my soul. um, and so I had to prove to them that I was doing this thing, and then they stapled like an extra paper in my passport, and I still haven't taken it out. That's basically like a week visa. Like, if you're not out by Friday at midnight, you will be detained and thrown in jail, like that kind of thing. Like,
Wow.
yeah. And then so while I was in Canada, I feel like the plot thickens. I was like, I haven't been to the Alberta Center for the Arts. What's that place?
It's in Calgary? I don't
No,
know
it's
if I
not in
know.
Calgary. It's like towards the mountains.
Banff, maybe?
Oh my gosh, yeah, it's Banff. Yeah, so seeing Banff, and then also our sister clay production place in Medicine Hat. Yeah, so I wanted to go see those places, and so I wanted to see Medalta and Plainsman in Medicine Hat, and it was like a weird time. It was like a Friday night or something. I don't know. So I figured it's an arts center, just like the Brave. People are just gonna be there. So I show up, and like there's nobody at this place. Like it is just all shut down. And then kind of like because I grew up doing what I did in high school and like sneaking into the back of the art class. There, they had some construction going on in this other gate, so I was able to kind of like go to this back gate, and the first thing I noticed is like pizza oven. I was like, okay, I know where I'm at. Um, so this pizza oven and kiln yard at Medalta. And so through that, you can get like there's like an entrance into the back, which is like the glaze room or something. And so I go in this place, and it is like crickets. Like there's nobody in here. So I'm in this new country, had this like experience at the border, and I'm just like nervous and on edge. And there's nobody here. And I was like, really? I guess I was like coming off of adrenaline, and I just sat on their couch that they have like in between the studios, and I fell asleep. And like I was like, oh my God.
This is so funny.
Yeah. And so I wake up, and it's like dark, dark, dark now in the middle of the night. And like I'm like trying to go and figure out where I can get out of the studio without sounding the alarm, right? Because like I can see their gallery, I can see their administration office, like I can see the studios, and I go out the back of the kiln pad, and that gate is now locked. Like the construction crew is like gone for the day and locked it up. And so I'm like, how in the world did I get out of here without causing a scene? And so I had to jump the fence, and I ended up like scraping my arm really bad.
What was that, like a 10-foot fence?
I would probably guess like 8. Yeah.
Wow.
So I was able to like jump and get the top and then swing my leg over. Oh man. And yeah, it was tough. And so I'm like this person that just came to Medalta and Plainsman and never saw anyone, never like said hi. And then just so happens that the old director, Aaron Nelson, was like in Helena for a friend's birthday party who used to work at the Bray. And I was like, hey, can I tell you a story? And I'm not kidding. Like he was like bent over laughing at all of this, like trying to get. So my road to the North Mount Pleasant Art Center was
A bumpy road.
a bumpy road. Yeah, but an experience that I'll remember for the rest of my life. And I went like that opportunity was because I was a resident at the Bray at the time. Yeah, good times.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, to wrap up, can you leave your social media and website so people could get in touch if they want to?
They both desperately need some updating. But I'm trying to get better at that. My Instagram handle is Bill Wilkey Clay, and then my website is wilkeyarts.com. And if you ever, my brother's name is Clay, and so his Instagram handle is Clay Wilkey Bill. Just as a thing, yeah.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thanks so much, Bill. This has been a real pleasure.
Yeah, thank you, Ben. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you.
I'd like to thank Bill for coming on the show. I think you could hear how much laughter we had and how much I just enjoyed connecting to him. I've known him for a long time, but we rarely sit down and talk for this length of time. Before we go, I wanted to thank today's sponsors. That's the Rosenfield Collection of Functional Ceramic Art, Cornell Studio Supply, and the Archie Bray Foundation. If you or your organization would like to be a sponsor on our network, you can get in touch at brickyardnetwork.org. I'll be back next week with another episode. Thank you all for tuning in. If you'd like more information on the artists on the show, or if you'd like more information about the workshops and events that I'll be having in the next couple months, you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook under Carter Pottery. Another great way to support the show is to leave me a comment on iTunes. To do that, search Tales of a Red Clay Rambler under iTunes Podcasts, and you'll find a page that's linked to our show. Thank you guys for the support.